Councilmember Sylvia Arenas, who is being challenged by rival Jim Zito. So the rules are the same. You're each going to get a minute to do an opening statement. After that, I'll move right into questions where you'll each get a minute to answer those questions. When you see the stop sign go up, then try to wrap up what you're saying and we'll move on. So I'll start with you, Sylvia.
Wonderful. So I'm really proud to be serving our city at this moment in time when we have so many national issues that we have to fight for, right, and against. Born and raised in San Jose, I've been living in District 8 for the last 18 years with my husband and my 2 children who are still school-aged. And it's really because of them, families like mine, families like yours, that I'm seeking re-election. And what it really comes down to is making sure that our neighborhoods that are at the center of everything that I do, because really they're the building blocks of our society. When I first started, we had a decimation of our essential services, especially our police department. So we've had to work really hard to make sure that our streets are safe, that our neighborhoods are safe. And so we've doubled neighborhood associations in my district. We've, I think, by 20% increased police officers. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far.
Mm-hmm. Jim.
Good evening. I'm Jim Zito, and I am running for the San Jose City Council District 8. And as a 30-year Evergreen resident, I've been an effective leader in East San Jose and Evergreen. And 20 years leadership includes 8 years on the City Planning Commission, 10 years on the Evergreen School Board, 13 years on the D8 Community Roundtable, and I was a founding member and first president, 4 years on the General Plan Task Force, and all the update committees. And my priorities, and the reason why I sought to run, is because I want to ensure that we have strong and safe neighborhoods, that we reduce traffic congestion, that we provide adequate housing and affordable housing, and also to deal with the homeless issue, which is a real tragedy, and ensure that San Jose stays fiscally sustainable. So to all San Jose residents, I will say I'll be fiscally responsible, independent, and I will stand up to both special interests and to divisiveness.
Great. Jim, we're going to go right into questions, and I'm going to start with you. You mentioned homelessness. That's where we're going to start. It has increased by 42% in San Jose over the last 2 years, despite voters approving a $950 million bond measure for affordable housing. So my question is, why aren't we making a dent in the problem, and what new solutions do we need to try?
Well, I think part of the reason why we're not making a dent is we haven't really done the homework and studied what are the causes of the homelessness, right? We know that there are mental health issues. We know that there's just people who are down on their luck and maybe missed a paycheck because of being laid off or be reorganized. It could be because of drug abuse. We need to really separate out which people are suffering from which of the issues. It is not a one-size-fits-all for the solution. I think that we need to also work more cooperatively with the state, county, and federal agencies. There's a lot of money being poured into this problem, and I think we really need to do a more effective use of those funds and working together to come up with best solutions, and also use best practices from other cities.
And so, yeah.
Thank you for the question. So as the chair of Neighborhood Services Committee, I get to work on these issues really intimately, and I've recognized that in our count in time study. That's okay. These things happen, right? Everybody has a cell phone, and it's in our purse or in our pocket.
Could we restart your answer? I'm sorry about that. So the question again is, why aren't we making a dent? And what new solutions do we need to try?
Okay. Thank you for the question. I'm going to start when I was serving as a school board member in Evergreen School Board. I saw the exodus of our families, of our children. In our first 2 years, we lost about 1,000 kids. And so that means that those families have left the area. So it's not just an issue of housing, of having affordable housing. For sure, we are making some progress there. But the issues are multi-layered, right? It's an issue of high cost of living and stagnant salaries. It's an issue of not having a regional approach. We can't build our way out of this, and it can't be left to San Jose to do. We really have to rely on our cities, our neighboring cities, to step up to the plate and do the same thing that we're doing, right? And investing. Just this week, we passed a affordable housing project. It's the Quetzal Gardens, and that's 71 units, new units for that have, I think, up to 3 rooms. So it means that they're accommodating families, and that's really who's at danger at the center of all this. So we have to make sure we organize.
Great. I'll stick with you. How would you deal with so-called NIMBYs who refuse to allow affordable housing in District 8?
I'm sorry, it's for me?
Yes,
I'm
we'll stay
sorry.
with you.
Repeat the question?
How would you deal with NIMBYs who refuse to allow affordable housing in District 8?
We do have an underlying restraint on District 8, and it's the East Hills Evergreen Development Policy. And so we're not meant to grow. Our area is not meant to grow. We've seen developers try to grow our area, even illegal development. And so I fought that with our community. We did that together. We fought against special interest in illegal development. And so it's not about affordable housing in District 8. It's about any type of development. It's very restricted by our development policy. And so we have, I think, one unit or one building that is affordable housing that's near our villages, and it's our senior housing. But the truth is that District 8, if we build, it's more expensive. Because the city infrastructure costs are too expensive for us to keep up, and that would just fall back on the residents and our taxpayers. So we have to take a look at where it's smart to do that, and that means building high in the downtown areas.
Okay. And Jim?
So your question was about NIMBYs, and I was on the Planning Commission for 8 years. And let me tell you, people would come before the Planning Commission on a regular basis, and there was a lot of opposition to certain types of development. The key that I found with that experience is communication and a lot of, how can I say, groundwork ahead of time. Work with the community ahead of time, have the community understand what's happening. For instance, now we're in the 2040 Vision Update. I'm on that committee. I was on the prior 4 years, and I was on the original. And I think that when people understand what's going to be expected, like the urban villages, then they can start to become used to what's going on. Having that, how can I say, run up so people understand and it's not a surprise, and also working with the community and consistently getting their stakeholder input is going to be key to minimizing and mitigating NIMBY issues.
Great. Can we just stick with you for this
Sure.
question? The city is looking for new ways to generate money for affordable housing, and the City Council approved a March 2020 ballot measure to tax voters with a real property transfer tax for affordable housing. And I'm just curious, will you be voting yes or no on this measure, and why?
I was disappointed with that vote by the City Council, and the reason why is this. I think the premise is good, and I am all about trying to provide solutions for affordable housing and for the homeless. However, putting a general tax on the ballot with no guarantee that it can be used for the purpose intended, maybe it can start that way, but future councils can choose to change that. The second thing is it's a forever tax. And having a forever tax to me and not having the ability to go back and see the effectivity of whether or not that it was a good tax, the efficacy, and also to be able to adjust it, okay? And the third thing is where that flaw is. In Evergreen, $2 million probably affects, I don't know for sure, but probably 30% of commercial and residential properties. So I think that it should have been more assurances, how should I say, and making sure that maybe there's a sunset to it.
Sylvia?
Thank you for the question. I have obviously supported it. I voted on it this week, and I'm very proud of doing that. One, because it's not really on our residents. I was very nervous about another tax on our residents, but this tax really is going to impact 2%, maybe 3% of the properties in San Jose. And those properties are not in Evergreen. They're just not. There's very few of them, right? And so this is the reason that I get able to support it. One, it's general, and two, the voters say they are supportive of it, and really it has to be based on the voters. I can support it all I want, but if the voters don't have the appetite for another tax, they'll let us know at the ballot, right? But right now, I think it's a matter of putting together all of our efforts, because it can't be just on production, it has to be on protection and preservation, but this is definitely one viable option.
Could I rebut that, please?
Sure, we'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay, this should be quick. I'm just thinking of the Silver Creek Country Club and the Villages. There are a lot of properties in those two places, the Meadowlands, that are easily at $2 million. And so that's where I'm really concerned. Now, I do believe that overall in San Jose, it's probably a much lesser percentage, but for our district, it's going to impact us more than most.
Okay.
Can I do it?
We'll do one more rebut for 30 seconds.
So we have a colleague, Pam Foley, and she's a realtor, and so this is what she does before she became a council member, and she brought an average, and for Evergreen, it was about 1.3 was the average sales of homes, and there were very, very few in Silver Creek and very, very few in the Villages that went up to $2 million, so it's not very common. We do have a lot of mansions, but our district wouldn't really be the one that is most impacted. Actually, it would be District 1 near Cupertino.
Okay, so let's move on to another tax, potential tax. Do you support a new commercial linkage fee in San Jose to pay for affordable homes? Why or why not? Can we start with you, Sylvia?
Sure. Typically, we asked new development, like Google, who's coming into San Jose, to comply with the 20% affordable housing. And they're going beyond that 20%. They're going to 25%. They're doing their part, right? But it doesn't mean that everybody else who's building is going beyond that limit. Of what we're asking for. And so I think a commercial linkage fee is something that most of my colleagues are supporting, that I support. It's important that when one company, it's not on the shoulders of just one company, but that everybody who's getting the benefits of the redevelopment, if you will, of the downtown area, everybody has to pay into play, if you will.
Thank you for that question. So since 2002, when I started on the Planning Commission, the biggest issue that we ran up against was the job housing imbalance. And I believe that the problem is that locating businesses in San Jose is something that we really need to do to reverse that commute, to minimize that ratio, or actually to optimize that ratio so we have more jobs and less housing, so that the services isn't such a big portion of our costs. I'm concerned that a linkage fee on all companies is going to cause companies to say, we don't really want to locate in San Jose. We have to really be careful of being, how can I say, so obstructive or put up so many barriers that we actually scare away businesses and commercial. So that's a concern.
Can I do a rebuttal on that?
Sure, let's do 30 seconds.
So a commercial linkage, an effective commercial linkage fee means that we take a look at what the cost of development plus what is really what can afford to have a development. And the areas right now that can actually develop are the west side, downtown, and north San Jose. And so those areas would have a more significant commercial linkage fee than areas like Evergreen, or areas that, typically development is not viable or feasible. And so one of the things that we're doing in the city is making sure we tailor to that.
Great. Let's move on to basically division on the city council. We're seeing our current national political landscape perhaps trickling down to our local politics. And we're seeing a lot of 6-5 split votes without much room for compromise on that. So how will you bridge the so-called business versus labor divide on the council and work with colleagues with whom you strongly disagree with? And Sylvia, I think you started the last one, so we'll start with Jim on
Okay,
this one.
thank you for that question. People who know me know that I always work across the aisle. I always work together. To me, there are no political divides, right? Divisiveness is a cancer. It really is. It prevents good functioning groups to come up with solutions, okay? When I was on the Planning Commission, I've always worked with my colleagues, and even though I might be more conservative and might be more insistent on certain aspects, we would work together and we would try to come up with a compromise that was in the best interest of the community in general, right? The way I would work is I'm independent as far as my thoughts are concerned, right? I dig deep and I try to find out what the consequences are of all of our decisions and then to provide that information. And I think an informed decision is what helps people work together.
Sylvia.
Thank you. I'm currently serving and facing this dynamic. It's very unsettling to have your colleagues who typically, all of us, I think, have the same concerns for our community: housing, public safety, transportation. It's the way we go about it, right? That we have sometimes a difference of opinions, but I think those differences bring richness into the discussion, and I think that needs to be leadership that is open to that, that's open to making sure that there's compromises and that we find a common ground, because there's value to both sides. I typically, and I'll tell you, this is one, the two most divisive votes have been one around the equity during the budget season, and the second is the high-rise development incentive fee. And for both of those, the reasons, and I just want to share is really quickly, is equity is absolutely important. We need to make sure that our systems reflect that. And second, the high-rise development didn't include workforce standards, so I couldn't support it.
Great. Let's switch gears a little bit to electricity, an issue that is going to be plaguing us for the next decade, because following years of disastrous fires and planned power outages, Mayor Sam Liccardo has called for a customer-owned utility in San Jose. And I'd like to know if you support that proposal and why or why not. Can we start with you?
Sure, absolutely. Our residents are really just taking some damage, if you will, from the lack of infrastructure investment from PG&E. And we shouldn't have to do that because we've been paying our fees. We pay into PG&E, so we should be benefiting from a safe infrastructure. So I do agree with the mayor in a consumer-owned utility company. I don't know that it's going to happen rather quickly, but I think we should study it and figure out what are the benefits. We already have a clean energy department, so it's not a stretch to figure out how to have a consumer-based public utility.
Right? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I think in concept to bring in the public utility might be attractive, but I really always hesitate when government takes over certain, how can I say, utilities. Take, for instance, water, right? We don't have as much control over the pricing of the water, and the bills that get to the residents. However, we are in Silicon Valley, and there's some amazing technology out there, and I think that microgrids are really a way that we can go ahead and not necessarily have it owned by the by the municipality, but allow customers to take part in ownership, and I mean true customer ownership. Okay, with microgrids, you have the ability to have groups, maybe schools, maybe large areas that have solar panels, be a center and distribution hub for power in their neighborhoods or in their communities. And I really believe that that's something that we should start to look at. as a solution and work with private industry, have a public-private partnership to work toward that goal.
Great. One of the biggest topics in San Jose right now is around the downtown, which we've talked about a bit. So specifically what's happening around the Google development, around what Jay Paul and others are doing, Gary Delabau in the downtown. And my question is, there's undoubtedly going to be ripple effects across the city from these. So how can we ensure the impact from this wave of development is positive across the city? Can we start with you, Jim?
Sure. So we're talking about a development of residential or commercial or a combination?
So what's happening in downtown is a large combination between the Google development,
Okay.
But then of course we've got a lot of commercial development happening in the city's core between what Jay Paul is doing at
Right.
City View Plaza and Park.
So you're talking about the big picture?
Yeah,
Okay.
all
So-
of the development coming at once.
Okay. So I do believe the downtown is the proper place for most development. I believe most downtowns are built for that purpose. The transit infrastructure, the overall services infrastructure, and the more density that you have downtown, the more you're able to economize, right? Because you'll be able to raise that tax base without having an excessive amount of service cost, right? So I actually believe that as long as you manage that, and we have experts in San Jose and in the surrounding area. We probably would need to work with the county and other surrounding cities because it's going to not just impact San Jose, but the whole region. So from that perspective, I think that working together cooperatively and to really look at what the impacts are, to really do some smart development, smart planning. I love the fact that we're in our next round of the 2040 update, and we can start looking at where those urban villages are going to be, where the intensification should be, and to maybe relax the height limitations and things like that.
Great.
I think it's an exciting time for San Jose. We're growing, we really are. And I remember going to the St. Joseph's Cathedral with my parents when I was a kid, and downtown looks nothing like when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. And I think it's a good progress, right? I think we have to make sure that there's public value in a lot of the development that the city of San Jose is involved in. And with that, we have to make sure that there's workforce standards involved. Because when you grow, you're gonna need the service industry. And the service industry, you have to make sure that there's affordable housing. You have to make sure that that you take into account that growth into our city and not just accommodate high-end earners. And so I think that's one of the issues that we are facing now is that this housing crisis is also an income crisis, and we haven't really advocated for our service industry to grow at the same time our high-end tech industry is growing. So unless we have other alternatives.
Great. So we're gonna do our final question here, and this one is, I want to know the biggest difference between you and your opponent. I'll start with you, Sylvia.
Sure. Jim and I both served on the Evergreen School District. I have 23 years of public service. I'm a true public servant, and I've been doing this service with our families in different capacities. And so I look at policies and I look at the public value of it. And what is our neighborhood? What is our families? What is a single mom with 3 kids? What are they going to gain from the decision that's in front of me? And so I really take a look at a very granular level, the impact that our policies have on our families and our communities. And so part of I think the difference is that we may have real similar values, but the way we go about achieving our values and achieving our policies is the biggest difference. I know that we have politically 2 different views. You're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. But that shouldn't divide us, right? We have both the same very similar concerns about our communities. The second biggest difference is that I've been already doing this work, and I think very successfully.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I am a fiscal conservative and a social moderate. I'm not a progressive. I have real depth in all that I've done. I've been on the school board for 10 years. Okay, I'm in my third term. I was on the planning commission for 2 full terms, even though I was asked while I was on the planning commission, hey, will you run for city council? And I said, no, I haven't done my work. I want to finish out my terms, okay? My depth of experience, my analysis of the issues, okay? The fact that I really do reach out and I try to find not just what the answer to the problem is, but what are the unintended consequences down the line, right? I reach out and try to get as much input and do my homework, because an informed decision is the best kind of decision. I demand for data, and when I was on school board, before that I had people come up to me and say, oh, they were 15 minutes long. When I'm on the school board, they're never 15 minutes long because I ask the kinds of questions. Same thing with the planning commission. I'm thorough, I reach out, and I work with people. And I think, not saying necessarily that Sylvia doesn't, but that's something that is a trademark. I truly walk the walk.
Great. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our questions for tonight. So I want to thank both of you for joining us. I want to thank everybody from our audience in-house, as well as people who might be viewing this online, for tuning in. Remember to join us tomorrow for our second night of candidate forums. That's going to be featuring races for San Jose City Council Districts 2, 4, 6, and 10. And if you appreciate San Jose Spotlight's work, to keep the community informed, please support our nonprofit newsroom by becoming a sustainable member with a donation as little as $5 a month. You can learn more at sanjosespotlight.com. Thanks again, and good night.
Sylvia, thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you for your service.